Hello, it's Biscuit here. A while ago Warp and I created an awesome Portal 2 map called The Twist. If you haven't played it yet, go and play it before watching this video or you will regret it. In this video I will walk through the custom elements I created for that map. First, here is the fake exit element. It appears like a normal exit, except in the editor it appears as a door. When I make a button connection to the real thing and the fake exit, you can see the difference in the names that the editor provides. In the editor the fake exit appears just as a door. It requires a large empty room behind it, because of all the extra stuff it brings into the map. The editor doesn't know of all this extra stuff, so the puzzle author must estimate the exact amount needed. In this video I will show what happens when you make too much room. So here's our fake exit door, all isolated. It contains nothing but the door, the tunnel, and the broken bridge and the dummy exit elevator. There is also a trigger that opens and closes doors when you approach them, just like in the real thing. Next to the dummy exit elevator there is a brush that prevents you from accidentally falling into the pit. It also prevents you from reaching the elevator even with fancy bunny hopping tricks. You can still fall into the pit if you like. There is an instant death trigger there, which I will not show now. The ceiling parts here come from the element, but the side walls along with the lights were made in Puzzlemaker and are responsibility of the puzzle designer. The next part is the behind the scenes tunnel. It appears in the Puzzlemaker as a laser emitter. As before, a large vacant space is reserved for all the details brought in by the test element that the Puzzlemaker does not know about. When we look at the inserted elements from the outside, we see the blocky outline typical to instance elements in Portal 2. These outside walls are required to prevent leaks in hammer elements. They also pad out the walls so that there will be no unnecessary empty holes between the element and the Puzzlemaker map walls when the element is inserted into the real map. The map builder VBSP removes all those never seen walls that you could never access. Here they are seen, because you can reach those outside walls. On the inside this tunnel is pretty much as you would expect from having played this map, with its own lighting elements and so on. There is this panel banger, which attracts attention towards the broken wall that leads to the second puzzle in the map. However, what's interesting is that the second puzzle is actually in a completely different location in the map, because of Puzzlemaker size limitations. This is accomplished through the use of a linked portal door, a rectangular portal without edge decorations. There are actually two copies of the panel banger in the map, one next to both sides of the portal. They move in unison. This is to make sure that the sound is properly heard on both sides of the portal from the correct directions. It probably was difficult to see in my video because of the long distance without playing it in high definition mode. Anyway, this pretty much covers the underground tunnel. The next extra element that I made specifically for this map is absolutely huge. If you have played this map, you can already guess what it is, because in the Puzzlemaker it just shows up as a laser emitter. This next test element is an observation room with a couple of back doors. As usual, the extra element is surrounded by a huge number of square blocks for the reason that was explained earlier. However, this time those bulky blocks are coated by the no-draw texture instead of the back panel's cheap texture, handily preserving the surprise even to this moment, making the interior mostly invisible when observed from the outside in this setting. Let us explore the element from the inside. What is special is that this test element contains a number of projected textures, i.e. lights that cast very cool dynamic shadows. I learned this trick from the Stanley Parable, which uses it extensively. What makes it difficult is that Source Engine supports only one projected texture simultaneously. Your map can have multiple of those, but just one can be active at the same time. You need to design your maps so that triggers turn on the proper light when you are about to see the next one. Normally all Puzzlemaker maps have exactly two of these special kind of lights. One of them is in the large observation room and the other one is either in the entry elevator room or in the cooperative exit room. The Twist has several more and most of them come from this test element. Anyway, here we are in the Stanley Parable. Wait, what? How did that happen? You may ask. Quite simply, I just copy-pasted. This is still Portal 2, But since it is also the source engine, and more to the point, the Stanley Parable was built upon this very same version of the source engine, even going as far as reusing many of the assets of Portal 2, it is very compatible with Portal 2. There were only a few models and textures here and there that needed to be packed into the map file, about 15 megabytes in total. Like the Stanley Parable, this map section uses linked portal doors all over the place. Even without the iconic narrator, I tried very hard to capture at least some of the feeling of the original game in this Easter egg section of this map. But it does require quite a huge room, and because of limits in the dimensions of a Puzzlemaker map, adding this map section made it necessary for me to move the second puzzle to a different physical location in the map. Next on the list we have a few item droppers. This time in the map editor absolutely nothing looks out of ordinary. It is a normal map in every regard. Or is it? Let's find out. So, we have here 2 cube dispensers and a turret dispenser. The cube dispensers work like you would expect. A button fizzles the cube and a new one pops out. A new one also pops out if you fizzle the cube by some other means. Likewise, a new turret can be dispensed by pressing the associated button. Now if you know me, you know nothing is as it first appears. All 3 of these droppers have a trick to them. Once you have brought a cube past a certain section of the map, simulated by a console command I just entered, if you accidentally fizzle the cube, the turret dropper will give you a new one. This secret mechanism was introduced to reduce the player's potentially frustrating backtracking they would need to do if they accidentally fizzled the cube. Regardless of which cube you fizzle, the turret dropper will always drop you a brand new companion cube. Even after dropping cubes, the turret dropper still maintains its normal function of acting as a turret dropper. Basically, the extra cube dropping mechanism is a mercy feature. The in-universe reason for the turret dropper is that it's a broken cube dropper. The normal-looking droppers are actually called mercy droppers. There's exactly 2 of them, and they are rigid to work in communication with the turret dropper. Because the mercy dropper still drops the actual cube when the turret dropper also drops a cube, the map designer is responsible of making sure that the player cannot backtrack to the mercy dropper once they receive the first cube from the turret dropper. This was such involving work for such a comparatively minuscule feature in the map. The next point of interest is this weird contraption on top of Test Chamber 2. It includes this element that appears as a trickle multiple element, but which really is a cube detector. It activates for 7 seconds whenever it detects a cube, and this is how it works. This button here is going to simulate the act of arriving into this chamber for the first time. It generates a cube over there, the cube falls, gets detected, and that in turn causes the second cube dropper to activate. Neither cube dropper drops automatically the first cube. The second cube dropper is the real thing. When a cube drops from that dropper, this detects that the cube was generated and it activates these 2 tractor beams or excursion funnels for exactly 7 seconds. It also opens up this angled panel. These 2 funnels together take care of gently letting the cube down onto that button on the floor. Exactly 7 seconds after the cube was detected, this shuts down, and this shuts down. This OR gate from B-mod makes it possible that the cube is generated when the second compartment first generates a cube, or when the pedestal button in the corner is pushed. If I connected the arriving signal directly into the OR gate, the pedestal button would never work, because the arriving signal never stops being signaled. The OR gate fires whenever either input fires, and if the arriving signal was one of its inputs, the OR gate would never stop pushing out the signal, and therefore the cube dropper would never see the off-on edge in its input that it needs to generate a new cube. So entering the test chamber, we can see that the initial cube was spawned and is sitting safely on the button. If the cube just fell from the ceiling at this distance, it would bounce randomly to some direction and not sit safely on the button. When I kill the cube, you can see how this respawn mechanism works. And you can also count exactly 7 seconds from when the ceiling opened to when the panel cuts. And here's to show that the explicit cube respawn button also does its intended thing. The only customized element here was the 7-second cube detection trigger block. The final special element created just for this map was the broken ceiling. In the editor it appears as a large observation room window. The ceiling accepts one input, which switches on the projected light that casts dynamic shadows. Here we can see the ceiling in action. When I click the button, the light gets cast. That's pretty much all she wrote. Thank you for watching, see you in the next video, and to those observing the upcoming Pesach, I bid you also Chag Sameach.